I mean, fair, Assini. Absolutely fair. I love the depiction of Jesus in Western culture with the blonde hair, blue eyes, and pale skin, even though, like, even if he was a lighter skinned Middle Eastern person, he was a fucking carpenter. He would have been goddamn tan as fuck. And he probably had dark hair and dark eyes and was most likely of darker skin. But there's actually a thing, there's a pope. It's either a pope or a king in like the 1500 or 1600, and it's like the depiction of Jesus in 1 year goes from, like, you know, kind of curly-ish black hair with dark eyes and a little bit darker skin to blonde hair, blue eyes, and white. Literally imaging the, imitating the image of the king's son. And it's so fucking obvious that, you know, that's the point in time where they were like, yeah, you know what, we're gonna do some self-insert here, and we're just gonna change a little bit of these features, and there we go. Oh, perfect. We need a white Jesus. But then, I mean, you look at, like, every other culture. There's Asian Jesus, there's black Jesus, there's alien Jesus, there's dolphin Jesus, there's starfish Jesus. So, you know, the idea definitely has, like, spread because of its, what do you call it? Do you have that picture real? Wait, my profile picture or like the original? Let's see if I can word this right. Depictions Christ between 100 and 200 AD. Here's a good one. Here's actually like a really good one. Between 100 and 200 AD, this is the depiction of Christ. And then we move to 1700 AD. And now we've got this. It's like an absolute change. And that is 100% I don't know if I can really say westernized, but, you know, modernized, let's say. Modernized. But yeah, like comparisons. What he originally looked like, what he looks like now. This is like the Islamic depictions, this is like the Christian depiction. It's a very heavily cultured thing, which I don't think a lot of people understand. No, Jesus is not God. In Islam, Jesus is not God, Jesus is just a prophet, right? Whereas in Christianity, Jesus is the Son of God. The small differences in the interpretations or understandings of the Abrahamic religions. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. He can't not be the Son of God and be the Son of God. Like, he can be a prophet and the Son of God, but he can't be not the Son of God and the Son of God. So, that's probably one of the main issues of dispute, is did Jesus himself actually ever claim that he was the Son of God? Or was that an impart by other people onto him because of the miracles? And it's a very interesting question when you look at how telephone works and you wonder what the original like first draft of, you know, the diaries of the people. Fuck no, it's not Son of God. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is, does Jesus ever say that he's the Son of God? Because I think that should be what the discussion is. It shouldn't be, it should be, did he ever call himself that? And if he ever did call himself that, is that a reiteration of what he said that's been changed over a period of time to include that? It's like, is there a really way for us to know whether he truly said? Because if it's like, oh, well, he didn't, well, it's like, well, maybe it was erased somewhere. So it's like, no matter how much you look at it, there isn't any way to prove wholly each one. So at that point, you just have to ask yourself, well, what are the repercussions of each interpretation, right? So if we look at he's a prophet and he's not the Son of God, and the fact that he performed miracles, does that mean an ordinary man can perform miracles? That brings an entirely new philosophical understanding into the wake of saying that not only someone, it'd be saying that, like, touched by God is the ability to enact miracles. It is not divinity by blood, if that makes sense. Whereas then you look at the origins, at least I don't know what the Islamic origins of, like, the Virgin Mary are. Like, is the story the same in Islam, or is it completely changed because the origin of the story is very much placed on Jesus being the Son of God in Christianity? So how is that portrayed in Islam when it comes to Jesus' birth and the wise men and everything like that? Is it all just preparing for the prophet who's going to change it? God did not take a wife or a child because he is great. Jesus did not say that he is the Son of God. See, and I like that interpretation, Asini, where it's like the idea that God would take a human female kind of diminishes, at least in my opinion, like, the quality of God, right? As you said, because he is great. There's, you know, like if you get down to the bolts of it, God raped fucking Mary to get Jesus, if Jesus is the Son of God. No matter how you want to look at it, because it's like, it is what it is. But then there's so what is then the child out of wedlock? So premarital sex. Would that not constitute, like, the stoning of all three of them? Jesus, Joseph, and Mary? So there's always the idea that it's all this giant elaborate fucked up story just to prevent stoning from premarital sex. Or is in Islam Joseph and Mary were married at that point? So what I think is very interesting is looking at the history. Jesus, son of Mary. Then brings into question, is Joseph the father? Which I always have this funny play on words, because my middle name is Joseph, so I always say that my middle name is the father of Jesus. and no one ever picks up on it, that I'm like slandering in a way God being, or Jesus being the Son of God, because God would be the father of Jesus, not Joseph. But no one ever picks up on that, and I find that fucking hilarious. But then, Asini, what does it really matter if people believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Because I think the repercussions of that are something that should be brought to the forefront of the discussion. Because I think it's a very reasonable thing to say for prescription. But then you look at, let's say, Old Testament God versus New Testament God. Bible has been distorted. The Quran is the word of God and has not been distorted. Jesus does not have a father. Well, how do you know that the Quran has not been distorted, Asini? Like, what is the evidence to say that the Quran has not been distorted? Because I 100% believe the Bible has been distorted. But I've never read the Quran, so I wouldn't know. But I believe all continued works are distorted because we're all human and mistakes happen, and unless there is, I'm sure there is probably, right, like the original copies of the original script that's like 2,000 years old. If you think that Jesus is the Son of God, then this is polytheism and there's punishment in the end. Well, what are the stipulations, Asini, for Jesus dying on the cross for all of our sins if he's not the Son of God? Because I think that's another interesting thing to look at, to say, if Jesus wasn't the Son of God, then how did he absolve us of our sins by dying on the cross? By which mechanism does the death of a prophet cause the salvation of mankind? So I think this is a huge part of what you could call the distortion of it. But I do like the idea of Galatians 4:16. I've told you the truth, therefore I am now your enemy. And that literally describes Jesus' life. Telling people the truth and then being like, fuck it, I don't want to believe you, so we're just gonna kill you so you can't speak your truth. Just another example of mob mentality, calls to violence, and political assassinations. Like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it, but in my opinion, Jesus' death was just another political assassination. And in many ways, historically, it's like there are swingings towards like the relationship that Jesus and Pilate had, for instance. That they were like kind of good buddies, you know? Like, they were on the same kind of side. They had an understanding, let's say. But the mob is the rule. And if you can't sway the public, then you fall by the public. And public sentiment is one of the biggest issues with, in my opinion, free will. But that's what makes the conversation around it so interesting, in my opinion, is the fact that was/is free will the one defining factor as proof of existence. Jesus did not die, Jesus is still alive, and he is with God now, and he will still come down to earth to show the truth and remove falsehood, and after 7 years, Jesus will die. I didn't know about that. After 7 years, Jesus will die upon earth. I know that the idea is that his spirit, you know, technically... So, like, this is my question then, Asini. Is Jesus the only living person in heaven? Because if he came back to life, there's also the question of, okay, well, if Jesus came back to life and resurrected after 7 days, like, how do you put this? Is he like, yeah, like, is his physical body the only physical body that exists in heaven? Because only, other than maybe God's physical body, if God has a physical body. Because only spirits and angels have physical bodies, or are they spirits in the way that, like, the idea your spirit goes to heaven, but your body remains on earth? So there is precedent then due to that when the rapture happens, the people that are raptured will then be like a separate class of citizens inside of heaven, because they will be alive with bodies inside of heaven instead of being spirits inside of heaven. And does this play into question, is that a fairness? That are you automatically condemned to be a spirit inside of heaven because you were not born and you did not exist on earth in the time of the rapture? Or does it transform and reunite each person in heaven with their own body? So now everyone in heaven is a living spirit. He will be alive like you and me, flesh and blood. So when he comes back, he'll be flesh and blood. But does that mean he's flesh and blood in heaven? Or is his body like in a limbo where it's waiting for his spirit? Or does the spirit create the body, and when he comes down to earth, it will just create a new body of flesh and blood? But I think these are philosophical and, like, actionable questions that should be discussed around it in reality, as opposed to I guess the word should be like indulged in the ideas behind it, right? And that's kind of one of the things as me as a writer is at the end of the day, this is just information I can use to make my world building stronger by having an understanding of the clash between the ever-evolving interpretations of text over time, inlaid by human emotion and understanding and the power of trying to find a higher understanding in life. Man is going to be average, but powerful. That sounds about right, Asini. It's like you're not quite on the level, but you're not, the power of, unlocking the power of consciousness, right? You're not going to improve yourself in a way, but you're going to be more powerful. I'm not a religious person. I condemn fundamental religion as much as I condemn dogma in science. We should be using the understanding of the scientific method to interpret what the highest actual reality is. And in my opinion, no matter what you say, God is by definition an alien. And I think consciousness is fundamental to existence. And there are levels of consciousness. And there's the overall universal consciousness, which is a combination of absolutely everything. That would be quote-unquote God. Then there's the smaller consciousnesses. When you die, what do you think will happen? I think my consciousness will return to the great consciousness, and I will be a piece of it. I will still maintain myself, but I will be able to see all beyond the scope of what my a physical brain can handle. So I'll still be me, but I'll be more than me. I will be the entirety of me rather than small pieces of me slowly surfacing over time. Because it can't all be contained within this one vessel. Now, you can extrapolate that to like a religious understanding, but to me, that's just a scientific understanding of the fundamental nature of consciousness. And whether you call it God, whether you call it consciousness, whether you call it understanding, I don't think the words matter. I think the definitions matter. And if you look at it, all of the definitions point to the same thing. That consciousness is equivalent to spirit. So if your consciousness goes back to the whatever... Sean! Yo, welcome, how's it going, brother? We're having a theological discussion about the differences. Net is working again. Hell yeah, Sean. We're talking about the theological differences between, let's say, Christianity and Islam, and the interpretation of word and the understanding of science as opposed to religion in the invocation of understanding consciousness and where consciousness goes. So, Asini, so what you're saying is if I say that consciousness goes back to the universal consciousness, and the universal consciousness is God by definition, because God is everything, right? Then how is that not the same by definition in a scientific terminology, not the same definition as your religious terminology? Without just saying hell no, but actually using like an example and you know, like a comparison to be like, this is the reason why they're not the same. Other than simple human interpretation. Because I would argue that we as humans should understand that we are incapable of understanding the greater whole of what you would quote-unquote call God. Whether that's the entirety of consciousness or something else. But the fundamental concept of consciousness being alien in nature is simply a divide of scale, such as the difference between the mind and consciousness of an animal, such as a cat, or the consciousness of a worm, or the consciousness of an inanimate object, versus the consciousness of a human, versus the consciousness of a more advanced species, versus the consciousness of a god. Everyone will come out of their graves naked and be judged, and out of fear, you will not care about naked people. But Asini, could you extrapolate that to a non-physical element, where because we are physical beings, God had to put the words into a physical plane in order for us to understand it, but he wanted us to be able to extrapolate beyond the simple to the point of it's way too quiet. My personal belief is that God values genuine faith and not specifics of what we believe. Thus, in my personal faith, as long as you are genuine in your faith, you're golden. I agree with that, Sean. And I think that should be the defining factor. Is that as long as you that sound as your OGM on your voicemail will blacklist your number thinking it's a fax number. Indeed, Sean. It's a good life hack to have. But Assini, can you I don't know what the word is. Can we find common ground in the fact that you could understand that as humans we can't understand God, so there is a fine line of God understands us, and so he knows the best way to speak to us? Scary thing is that your whole life, everything you do, God will see and people will see. Well, that comes down to a fundamental question, Assini, of emotion. If you remove emotion from the equation, why would you care? And I actually have a short story on this, on the idea of that heaven is full of psychopaths and sociopaths. And it's the whole, is your heart lighter than a feather? And the paradox of it is that simple question, asking you that question, even if you go into it believing that your heart is lighter than a feather and having no weight in your heart. Oh, and babies, of course, like babies, because they don't have any understanding. So it's like full of babies, and yeah, I don't believe that. God will see, yes, and the cancer will be removed, but our souls don't need the poison going into heaven. That's the one thing, Sean, is that if we're going to heaven, we're not taking the bad stuff with us, right? So is that like a memory purge thing, where it comes down to, do we get all of our bad memories and bad actions purged when we go into heaven, so there's no possibility of thought to, like, you know, be bad? But then, again, guys, this brings into question, look at angels and Lucifer. If there's an inability in heaven to even have a bad thought, how did Lucifer wind up existing? How do angels fall from grace if they do not have the ability to even conceive of evil? Or is that the difference between angels and men? That angels can perceive evil even in heaven, whereas men cannot perceive evil in heaven because our souls are not strong enough to uphold the weight of evil. And if evil ever entered heaven, it would be the end of heaven. I should be affiliate now! Hell yeah, Ellie! Fuck yeah! Whoever dies as a child enter paradise, and whoever dies is a martyr. But a martyr to who, Assini? God gave us free will because otherwise we can't genuinely love anyone or anything. The same is true for angels. But I mean in heaven, Sean. Like, it's the question of, will we have free will to do evil deeds in heaven? And can you get thrown out of heaven? Can you make it into heaven, get into heaven, just to be thrown out? I think these are all very potent, very valid theological questions that no one ever asks. Because they're the hard questions. They're the ones that get into the deep, the root, the down, the dirty, the what actually goes up, the what actually comes down. Does that mean that everyone goes to heaven and everyone goes to hell? all of the good of you, whatever, even if it's the smallest piece, goes to heaven, and all of the bad of you goes to hell. So no matter what, there will always be a piece of you in hell and a piece of you in heaven. It's just the distribution of how much more is in heaven versus how much more is in hell. Free will, yes, but once we get into heaven, there's no point in committing evil because everything is already perfect. That means, in my opinion, Sean, that you don't even have the thought of evil in heaven. That it's not possible for you to have evil thoughts in heaven. It doesn't matter who the kid is, even if he's Diddy's son. But that's an understanding, Asini, of getting to a point of being able to comprehend. Once you've hit the point of being able to comprehend the difference between innocence, it's like, to me, it's the point in time when your soul has eaten the apple. And you now have a clear understanding of the difference between good and evil. At that moment, that is when you are now a conscious soul. And you are now in line for judgment. Because if you have no concept of good and evil, then how can you be judged upon it? Because you're essentially innocent to the thought that what you're doing was bad. And that's the power of ignorance. There is a scale to measure your good and bad deeds. And that's the idea, Asini, of is your heart lighter than a feather? And it's like taking a physical scale of a feather and your heart and saying which one is heavier. And that's a personal thing. Right? You could be and to me, you could be a sociopath and a psychopath and believe that the things that you've done, the horrible, terrible, like a Ted Bundy or like Jeffrey Dahmer, like, to me, those kinds of people would have hearts lighter than feathers because they don't have that emotional understanding and connection, as in the fact that they have never eaten the apple. So, would they get into heaven because they don't have a fundamental understanding of the difference between good and evil? Or would the simple fact of the deed of breaking said, like, 10 commandments, right, is enough? And it's like, the 10 commandments are the one thing that are like, you don't have to know what they are. You break the rules, you're automatically out. Because there's something that a good soul would just naturally do because it wouldn't hurt other people. And then look at the question of how many people at that point for all of history, if we want to look at, are we talking hundreds of thousands of years? Are we talking millions of years? Are we talking thousands of years? How do we put that into perspective in a way that shows how many people over that period of time have gotten into heaven? Because aside from psychopaths, children, martyrs, and people who've not eaten the apple, let's say, maybe 1 million people, between like 100 trillion humans, 1 million made it into heaven. Does that sound accurate? God created Satan as an angel, but he refused to worship him and put him on earth as a test. If you obey Satan, you will go to hell. If you do not obey him, you will go to paradise. They shouldn't be called the 10 Commandments, but rather the 10 gifts. Thou shalt not steal, for God provides opportunity to acquire everything you need. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife or possessions. You will acquire what you need. I like those stipulations to go along with it, Sean, to show that it's not just a simple command. It is, you don't need to do these things because you're provided for, right? Every human being will be held accountable, even Jesus. And that comes down to one simple fact, Asini, that the thought is the sin. If you think it, you've sinned. Because the thought is what leads to the action. So all you have to do is merely think it, and you've already sinned. And I think, again, that's another thing people don't really talk about. They don't really say that is the extent of it. So how do we, and by definition, that means that everyone is a sinner. But that's where grace comes in, and that's why, Jesus' death is so important. Because that gives us the ability to repent. Every writer is then doomed because we think of very evil things in order to tell a story. It's very true, Sean. But I think it's the meaning of it is meant to show it's not, like you said, Sean, it's not a negative connotation in the fact of don't ever think bad things because it's a sin. It's everyone has bad thoughts. What matters is what you do with those bad thoughts. Do you say, oh no, I had a bad thought, please Jesus forgive me for having that bad thought, I'll try harder next time? Or do you say, man, I fucking hate that guy, I'm gonna go punch him in the face, fuck this shit, I'm over it, I'm done. Nah! That's like the perspective of the not nepotism, of like negative versus positive, like you can't resist temptation without actually being tempted after all. Exactly, Sean. So then it comes down to, did you actually do those? And even you can even put it in, Sean, that having the evil thought and not enacting it in and of itself is fundamental you'll be held accountable for your words and actions, not your thoughts. Well, that's what I was going to say, Asini, is if you have a thought and that thought does not turn into a word or an action, in my opinion, that is redemption. You have taken the thought that you've had, you have realized, oh, this is a bad thought, and you've discarded it. And the simple act of discarding it is the act of redemption. Because you have consciously made the decision to not go through with what you have thought, because you have calculated and analyzed what you thought, and you have realized that it is not the right answer. And that's why I say I always have three conclusions. Emotional response, you throw that one away, then you have a logical response, and you throw that away, and then you have a critical analysis of that logical response and say, what is the appropriate value of this? I would correct that. Not enacting it because of lack of ability isn't forgiven. Not enacting it despite being able to do so without taking the consequences of law into account is forgiven. Okay, that's a good nuance, Sean. Is it your own reasoning that has held you back, or is there an outside consequence that has held you back? You say, I'm going to punch this guy in the face, or I'm going to shoot this guy, and then you go, well, the consequences of human law in my country dictate that there will be consequences, so I won't do it. Or do you say, I want to kill this person, you look at yourself and you go, that's a bad mentality to have, you shouldn't ever want to kill someone, and you look at the reasons why you think that way, and then try to change your thought process. So, that act of redemption is analyzing and finding out why you don't or shouldn't enact what that is. So, if you're doing it for yourself to not enact consequences, that's different than looking at it from how do those consequences enact on another person in order for that to not be something that you should take action towards. But I absolutely love having these theological discussions because I think that is the only true way to anything is discourse. And you have to find a fine line in the middle, right? You can both believe on the outside, but you have to come to an understanding in the middle. right? And that's where conversation, dialogue, and I have a genuinely desired to kill. I never even tried to decide if I could accomplish the act, though, so I'm not sure how to count it. Well, Sean, you count it as your heart. Do you feel ashamed? I think that's a great way to put it. Do you feel ashamed for the way that you dealt with the thought? I think that is probably the best way to say it. If you felt ashamed because of the way that you dealt with it, it's bad. But if you didn't feel ashamed, then it's good, because you never had the intent. It was just spontaneous. There was never depth to it, right? Or you could do something jokingly, like I said, we had this guy in high school, and me and my friend would just make jokes about how we would wind up killing him because we just wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave the group. We'd say, "Get the fuck out of here. We don't want you here. Fuck off," and he just wouldn't. So we'd just be like, you know what? One day you're just gonna disappear, and we'd come up with all these horrible ways to fucking kill him and shit. But it wasn't ever. It was to be like, dude, this is this is how badly we don't fucking want you here. It was never we're actually going to enact this, and it was done in a humorous way to be like, a juxtaposition of how we feel. The reason I had the desire was petty, so from that aspect, I am fully ashamed. At the time, though, I meant it. So then, Sean, when you look back on it now, do you say, I am a better person and I would never think that way anymore? Because I think that is a redemption through time. Like, you may not originally redeem yourself, but you can redeem yourself at any point in time with any thought. You can also disgrace yourself with any thought. And I think that, again, comes back to the understanding of, on a godly level versus on a human level, that ability of redemption. That as long as you take accountability for yourself and go to that position where you're at, you can really hit a point where you need to filter yourself and look at yourself and say, is this a point of redemption on a thought? Is this a condemnation? Is this ignorant? Is this just me ignoring it, right? Have I simply cast it aside for a simple reasoning without actually holding on to it for inspection purposes? And is society or conscious, inevitability of thought the consequence of my understanding and scale of what depth of evil the thought is? It's I don't like that person versus I want to kill that person versus I'm gonna steal everything from that person, destroy their entire reputation, drive them into the ground, and then I'm gonna make it so they're gonna kill themselves. Go to such and such a land, for there are people there who worship God, so worship God with them, and do not return to your land, for it is a land of evil. So he has set out, and when he was halfway there, death came to him. So then, at that point, Assini, do you go to heaven because you made the journey to leave? Or are you condemned because you never fully committed the journey? Person in question was a teacher who was directly responsible for bringing the senior project into the school I was attending. He also tied it to 4 of the required classes, and you couldn't pass the class without doing the senior project. GPA of many students was far lower than it should have been. We had 3/4 of the time to do the same amount of work. Angels of Mercy and the Angels of Punishment argued about him. The Angels of Mercy said he came repentant, turning his heart to God. The Angels of Punishment said he never did any good. Then an angel came to them in the form of a human being. Well, then what is an angel, Assini? Like I said, if we go back to the definitions, an angel, if it's beyond, talks, what does this views from channels mean? Because it says I get views from Kai Sanat. It means, Callie, when you look at your Twitch, there's the main, So they placed him between them, and he said, measure the distance between the two lands, and whichever of them is closer, it is his. So they measured it and found to be closer to the land he wanted, and the angels of mercy took him. How far along the journey are you? So, Asini, do you take that as to be a physical, real, actual understanding, or you take that as a parable in order to learn from it? So you think that, like, you would say this is as real as me and you right now, as opposed to a concept like gravity, or a concept like sin, or a concept like infinity, where it doesn't have any physical grounding in reality. It is simply a hypothetical understanding of an extrapolation of a lived experience. And would you say angels are just higher forms of consciousness? So if you look at, like, you know, you have, like, an animal is here, a human is here, an angel is here, and God is, you know, unscalable. It applies to both the physical and the abstract. Your journey as being a better person, to being a better person, is just as valid as a physical journey to reach a better place on the earth. No, Sean. I mean the story that Asani is saying or Asini is saying like, that it is empirically true that there was a physical event in the past that involved physical beings of matter that had this event happen. Meaning that angels are physical beings made out of matter that can interact with reality? Or is it simply, I'm not American, I don't understand anything, just following along? I'm Canadian, so it's another thing, as Asini, is like the difference of culture is what I thrive on. And like seeing where different people have different perspectives and where those different perspectives come from, and integrating that into expanding my creativity as a writer to be able to see from different perspectives and why those perspectives are so important on such a different thing. And sorry, to go back to what you were saying, Callie Talks, what does views from channels mean? Because it says I get views from Kai Sanat. So when you're on Twitch, Callie, I believe there's like top 3 channels. So they'll say the top 3 channels that the person watches via watch time. And if they go to another channel, their Twitch account is locked to those 3 channels. So if someone watches Kai as one of their top 3, and then they watch you as one of their tops, like top 10, then it'll say that they came from that stream, essentially. It'll say people that view this stream also view you, because they've put, you know, just as much time into those streams as they have your stream. There were a great many physical events in the past. The Exodus was proven to have happened. The physical cause of the plagues was discovered to be a supervolcano erupting. Angels in Islam are not spirits in the sense we usually understand the human soul, but rather beings created from light. There's an important difference between angels and the human soul. Okay, so by definition, angels are a form of alien that is an invocation of pure light. It is like the consciousness inside of light. And if you know anything about quantum mechanics, this can be proven through actual wave particle functionality. They neither eat nor drink nor marry, nor get sick nor die. They are creatures completely obedient to God, never disobeying his command. Angels have the ability to manifest a human-like body. Manifested through light, Sean, but I don't think it's manifested through physicality. So you can see them in the fact that they're a reflection of light, but I don't think you could, like, you would be able to pass through them, I think, is the idea, that they don't have a physical particle of existence. But I will say there, Asini, so was Lucifer specifically created by God to fall? If angels can't disobey God, then how did Lucifer disobey God? Was it God's intent? They can, in their manifested form, interact with physical objects. Interesting. So there are people that you could have met in your life, Sean, that could be angels, and you would never know it. Those people that you're like, man, this guy is just too good to be true. Oh my god. Guys, Callie's an angel. Callie is clearly 100% an angel. Hands down. It has been done. You know the angel of death. He's next to every person, every human waiting. Well, it's the point that angels were made for different purposes, right? Like, there's just different categories. It's like, are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse angels? What about archangels? What about archangels, Assini? The difference between like an angel and an archangel like Gabriel. Like named angels. And congratulations on level 2, Assini. And it's like... Manifestation of the understanding of trying to see from an angel's perspective, and why you could see, for instance, Lucifer would have the jealousy towards humans. Tried to send a message twice and it failed. That's weird, Sean. You should be able to spam whatever the fuck you want in my chat. They, however, aren't genuine physical beings. Their manifested forms don't require food or drink. They also do not lust in any way. There have been angel interactions recorded on video simply vanish after the encounter. There, it finally sent. Sean, they're trying to shut you down. They don't like this discussion that we're having. They're trying to shut us down. Like, no! Why? We're just having a conversation. This is what the world should be about. We should all be sitting here talking about this. Instead of being like, nah, I don't want to talk about that because it makes me... Or, like I said, fundamental religion where the idea of, do you... Okay, I guess here's a good one, Assini. Is killing in the name of your religion justified by God? Does God say, if you can't find a way to convert... Like, because to me it's like, if you kill someone, you can't convert them. So where's the line of, okay, we tried to convert this person, but it didn't work, now we have to kill them? Like, that's my biggest problem with religion, is, oh, if you don't believe me and you don't have the exact definitions and the exact words that I use, you have to die. Like, to me, that's... You're escalating yourself or elevating yourself to the level of God in order to judge other humans and enact God's judgment on other people. Which I would think the simple idea of that would condemn you to hell. There is an angel of death, an angel who blows the trumpet. When he blows it, everyone on earth will die. An angel of rain, and angels who count the good and bad things you have done. Yeah, like each angel has an individual specific purpose, right? Like, Lucifer's purpose was to fall from grace and become the devil. Like, he was literally brought into existence in order to do that. And that's the thing, is angels don't have the free will. Humans have free will. And you could say free will is God's greatest gift because it allows us to actually be. And that's where it's like, what is the point? And I think that's the God created beings in order to worship him, and then realized, well, what's the point in having beings that worship you if they don't have an inability to worship you? Then he's like, let's create beings that have an inability to worship me and see how many of them actually wind up worshiping me. Like, to me, if I was God, that's what I would do. And then it would validate the people that actually worship you. And you say, well, I don't care about the people that don't worship me. I mean, I created you. You have no say in it. What's hard to believe, Assini? Lucifer was always meant to be the tester, to tempt us to break the rules and sin. That part was part of his creation. Without Lucifer, we can't ever make the choice to be good. I am unsure if Lucifer fell or not. I think it's, Sean, it's based on the mentality of Lucifer himself. God made Lucifer the way that he was so that Lucifer would fall, and I think he wanted to make Lucifer genuine in that fall. So I think that the genuineness of Lucifer comes from the jealousy of humans in general. And his like, I don't want you guys to turn towards God. And that was like God's first attempt at free will. Because, Assini, nothing you've said so far is something that I don't believe. Like, I believe everything that you're saying, I just may not believe it in the same way that you do, right? But whether you're talking about it's the actual reality of it or it's simply the message of it, I think both are just as powerful. I exchange worship for love. We worship while on earth, as it's the only way to show our love. In heaven, we will physically hug him, whatever the heavenly body is capable of doing. I could see that, Sean. And then there's always the thought of your dreams are like mini trips to heaven, and your nightmares are mini trips to hell. And then calculate how many nightmares you have versus how many like dreams you have, and because my thing is, I hate people that dismiss things based upon the idea of, oh, this is religion, and can't extrapolate from religion an understanding that could either be psychological, philosophical, or, like, actionable. If we can't choose to hate God, then we likewise can't choose to love him. Love is what he craves. Oh man, when Islam was established in the year 800 AD, the Quran and the words of Muhammad, the Prophet, mentioned several signs that would occur, including frequent earthquakes and the increase in naked women who do not cover themselves. Well, I can definitely see that, because if you look at it originally, right? The knowledge of good and evil and the idea of shame is what makes people, like, other than temperature, right? Like being cold outside and you wanting to put more clothes on, one of those signs is that Palestine will be liberated, so they did not surrender. Well, I always wonder, Assini, if, like, for instance, you know, in like a hypothetical situation, what happens if someone nukes Palestine? and then a new nation moves in on top of Palestine, is it the land itself? Is it the people? So because if you look at something that's like 700 years ago, or like 700 AD, so 1300 years ago, and now, via migration and just like human genome, the people that live there now are fundamentally different than the people that lived there, let's say, when the book was written. So what if the people that are fundamentally supposed to liberate Palestine don't actually live in Palestine in our current time? And what if a mass exodus and destruction of Palestine in order to reinstate those who are supposed to be in Palestine happens? And theoretically, what if those people are the Jews? Like, does this become a massive issue for Islam? Or is this an extrapolation that takes it too far to a point of you can trace back the lineage? There are things that are not in doubt, man. Palestine will be later liberated. If God had not said so, they would have surrendered to Israel. But what happens in the next 50 years, Assini? And then there's the fact of, are you unwilling to even what's the word? Indulge in the hypothetical that the people that are in Palestine right now are not the people that should be in Palestine, and that Israel is actually in the right. And that once Israel conquers Palestine and moves into Palestine, that will be the event that liberates Palestine. Like, can that not be an interpretation of it? If you look at the fact of lineages of where the origin of Palestine comes from versus, like, Israel. And what about the pressing of Palestine before 1949 when Israel was established? Like, what happened in the last 1,300 years that would also indicate a liberation of Palestine? And this is coming from a person who has absolutely no knowledge of it. I am using the fact that I have no knowledge of it to allow myself to think outside of the box and not be grounded. I don't know, maybe the war will last for 100 or 1,000, only God knows. That's true, Assini. So, but I like the fact, Assini, that you're at least willing to engage in the conversation. Like, I'm not trying to change your mind or say that your beliefs are wrong, because I don't know if your beliefs are wrong. There's no way to prove it. I can't prove my beliefs are right or wrong. I can't prove your beliefs are right or wrong. So at the end of the day, we should just listen to each other and say, what makes sense out of these understandings? Israel is the one who invaded Palestine. Do you want me to explain it to you? No, Assini, what I mean is, like, if you're looking at it from a biblical understanding and saying that Palestine needs to be liberated, and, like, the Palestine-Israel thing is, once that's clarified, Palestine will be free. But I'm asking, is there a chance that there's a misinterpretation somewhere where the original people of Palestine moved out of Palestine and the infidels moved in, and now Israel has actually become the original people of Palestine, to the point of it is God's will that Palestine is conquered by Israel, because that would mean that the infidels are dead and Palestine is now reclaimed by God's true people. Thus the liberation of Palestine, thus enabling the next line, right? Because isn't that like the end of the world essentially lies upon that pedestal? That when the chosen people return to their home, that's basically the end of the earth. It's like, okay guys, time's up, timeline's over, we're cutting you off, servers are shutting down, guys, Earth is going offline in 24 hours. Sorry, we lost all funding, and it's not sustainable anymore. People have become super, desensitized to the point that even the craziest thing now doesn't even affect them. So, yeah, we've lost all of our funding, all the investors have gone, and as of tomorrow, we will be shutting down the Earth servers. Sorry, everyone. Super unfortunate, but it is the way that it is. Remember, we still have Qualzon Cookity 41068, so head on over to that server, and Israel will not be. I don't know if that's what you mean. I don't know, I'm just throwing out a hypothetical, Asini. And the whole point of this is to gauge your ability to interact in the conversation and be able to say either yes or no, and say, I concede that there's even the smallest, slightest chance that that's true, but that's not what I believe. Right? Then there's people that are like, that's impossible. And it's like, okay, well, I can believe that you say it's impossible, but could you believe that I believe it? The Jews claim that they originate from there and had to leave. Then the Palestinians came in and wouldn't cooperate with the rightful residents. Since history is written by the victors, we can't know how that happened. Exactly, Sean. So I think that's the biggest problem with being fundamentally on one side or the other, is we have no way to truly, authentically trace the origins to the point of saying who's right or who's wrong. So we can only level it to the idea of a belief. We can't go beyond the belief to the level of, oh, this is fact. Now, you can believe that it's fact, but belief doesn't make fact. You can also disbelieve facts, but at the end of the day, the fact is something that can be reproduced over and over like an experiment. Man, it's hard to explain what I learned in 18 years in 2 hours. Oh, no, it's totally understandable, Asini. That's where it's like, I just want to have a basic conversation about it and say, what do you believe about it? And then tell you what I believe about it and see how long that is. See, you believe that I'm wrong. That's fair to say. But can you prove that I'm wrong? That's the difference, Asini. Like, I can prove that if I drop this lighter, or if I let go of it, it will fall, by demonstrating it. Okay, I'm gonna let go of the lighter. Oh shit, it fell. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. Ah, shit, it fell. I'm gonna do it again. Ah, shit, it fell. I'm gonna do it again. Ah, shit, it fell. That's something that you can, that's a fact, that's something you can prove. Theology and understanding, you can't prove. It's abstract. So, in order to say that I'm wrong and you're right, you have to prove it. And it's not something you can fundamentally prove. So, the fact of saying that I'm wrong because of my interpretation of it, or misunderstanding of it in your eyes, in my opinion, is an overstepping of... before Islam, women were buried alive and adultery was widespread, but Islam came and forbade this. Well, I mean, you can say that, Asini, but that still happens today. Humans are humans. You're not going to change humans. I think whoever is physically born there belongs there and should get along with all those who are also physically born there. I agree, Sean, because at the end of the day, humans started as migrating creatures. We migrated before we became, like, when we were hunters and gatherers, we were migrators. It's hard to convince you, especially since I don't understand what you're saying. Well, Asini, it's not that you're going to convince me. You're not going to convince me that the only interpretation that you can possibly have is singular. I don't believe anything in the world exists that can be singularly applied. Not even gravity. Because gravity is perspective. If I was in space and I let go of this, it wouldn't fall. So even gravity, something as fundamental as gravity, has different interpretations and different understandings and different applications. So for you to say that there is only one singular way to interpret this and every other way is wrong, I think is just simply a arrogant way and a bad way of communicating. Hey Queen, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. On the other hand, if you were in space, would fall forever. Well, it's more of, Sean, if you're in space, you're falling already. So this is actually a great thought experiment, Sean. If I was falling and I let go of this, find some proof. No, Asini, you can't. It's not something that you can prove. Like, a singular perspective understanding is provable factually, statable scientifically. Man, I don't want you to burn in fire forever. But Asini, yeah, faith isn't proof, that's the point. Asini, what makes you so sure that you're not going to burn in hell because you're actually preaching the wrong thing to people? Like, is that a thought in the back of your mind? That, oh, maybe I've misinterpreted it and maybe I'm the one who's going to hell for preaching what I'm preaching. I'm not saying you're going to, I'm saying, is that a consideration inside of your head? That there is even the slightest possibility that you could be wrong. Because I think that's very important to look at. Because if you can't even conceive of the fact that you might be wrong, then fundamentally, I think under your own interpretation, you've proven yourself to be, of course it isn't. He has faith, and thus he couldn't be convinced he's in the wrong. The same as I have faith, and nobody can convince me I'm wrong. But it's not convincing, Sean. It's just being able to state, is there the possibility, even in the slightest, that I am wrong? Well, exactly, that's the question I'm asking, Asini, is do you believe that there's the possibility that you could go to hell as well? And if that's the case, then I'm completely willing to accept that. Because you saying, man, I don't want you to burn in fire forever is completely fair to say. Because I don't want the same for you, right? But since we don't know what's actually true, the best we can do is uphold our own genuine faith, like Sean said. So like me, I believe that religion is just a construct of human understanding of consciousness. So fundamentally, and hello Raymond, welcome, welcome. We are having a theological discussion about Islam, Christianity, and consciousness. It is an amazing conversation, and I am so glad that Asini has been willing to contribute to the conversation and not just like, you know, freak out and bitch out because I don't think the same way that he does. which most people do. Yes, maybe. And that's very important, Asini, and I absolutely respect you for that. And I respect your beliefs more because of that. Because that means you've had cognitive thought in your head, and it's not just cultural or like grooming bias that I've been raised this way, so I will always believe this. You've taken it under a microscope, you've critically thought it over, and you've still come to the same conclusion. And I think that's extremely important to differentiate between fundamentalism and belief. Fundamentalism is, I was taught this, I was raised this way, thus I will never question it, thus I am always right. Belief is, I believe this because either I've been raised to believe it, I've seen these things, I want to believe it, or it is my lived experience. And no matter which one of those, as long as you critically think about what you're doing, I think at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And to me, that's the redemption factor. The redemption factor is simply critically thinking about your thoughts and how they impact your actions and your words impact the world itself. And I think that's the fundamental basis of what redemption is. It is clear which religion you will follow, one that forbids alcohol, murder, cursing, adultery, nudity, tattoos, and homosexuality, or one that considers all of that to be right. See, Asini, and that's the different thing, is I am bi. I love dick. I ask you this, Asini. Why did God put my G-spot on my prostate in my ass if he didn't want me to pleasure myself from it? And, you know, the whole point of that is like the population control. Homosexuality is ingrained in genetics as a degree of population control. I was raised to be a Nazarene, but I realized that what's taught in any specific denomination is fundamentally flawed. I have faith in God, and that I must live the best life I'm capable of living as a person. Exactly, Sean. So it's like the outcome, one doesn't choose their orientation, God does. God also dictates who we love. And in my opinion, Sean, God is consciousness. And if you replace the word God with consciousness, everything makes sense. And that's how I live my life. Because I can't reconcile the idea of God without saying God is consciousness. God is just fundamentally consciousness. Boom, you solved it. We figured out what God is. To me, I don't understand how that's so hard for people. Is it blasphemy to say that, hey, I understand consciousness because I'm consciousness, so all I can do is extrapolate that to a greater size and a greater understanding of saying, looking at an animal, looking at me, saying me, looking at God? I think that's completely fair extrapolation. And that's provable through empirical science, through evolution of knowing how brains and consciousness evolves. But that comes back, it's a difficult question. We must start with the arguments of what is faith. Many distinguish authentic faith from blind faith, which accepts the irrational without examination, dogmatic and without conscience. Some philosophical definitions include that faith must be coherent, capable of doubt, and capable of engagement with reason and evidence. For example, the concept of Shraddha indicates a faith with attention, reverence, and spiritual responsibility. Therefore, if it exists, it is by the will of God. If God did not wish alcohol to be drank ever, then he would never be able to create it in the first place. The issue is abuse, not the substance. And abuse, Sean, is human. The substance itself is not fundamentally bad. We use alcohol to sanitize. It is the human function of abuse that goes along with the substance that is the problem. So fundamentally, the problem is human. Whoever never hears about Islam in his life will enter paradise. Well then, shouldn't it be, Assini, that you would want to destroy the religion? That would be entering the theological topic of sin. Yes. We've been talking about this for a while, Raymond. We are basically talking about the religion, consciousness, and science. And how they all play together intricately. And all are just perspectives of understanding. But fundamentally by that, Assini, shouldn't you want to destroy the religion so then no one would know of it, no one would ever hear of it, and thus everyone would go to heaven? If you truly believed that you didn't want anyone to ever go to hell? Because I think that would be the most moral choice, would just be to annihilate the religion. No one would ever learn about it, no one would ever know, and everyone would go to heaven. But that is impossible. There is no one who has not heard of Islam. Well, that's the thing, Assini. Not now. So shouldn't it be a collective thing of anyone who ever learns about Islam to never spread it? So as soon as you know, furthermore, if according to certain Protestant groups it is necessary to read the Bible and the works do not matter, the illiterate will go straight to hell, and just by reading the Bible you'll be saved. I've heard the term, but do not know the teachings, hence in that respect I have not heard of Islam. True, Sean, because I don't know what the fundamental differences are. But just extrapolation, shouldn't you want to kill the religion? And never spread the religion so everyone goes to heaven? And those who spread the religion would fundamentally go to hell, because by spreading the religion, you would be forcing people that would have gone to heaven to have the possibility of going to hell. So by spreading the religion, you are condemning people to hell. And that's another thing, Raymond Dow, is what kind of Islam? And then it comes back to interpretation and doctrine. So at the end of the day, the most realistic and God understanding way is to simply let people figure it out for themselves. And that's free will. You can be as ignorant or as knowledgeable as you want to be, especially in the day and age that we have now. So in that aspect, if there was like World War III and all religion disappeared, lots of religions don't believe on free will. That's another thing too, Raymond. Don't preach, live. If someone asks why you live the way you do, answer them. That will spread genuine faith like wildfire. Exactly, Sean, and that's why I live on principle. The principle that I live on is that I am 99% rule. Nothing is 100%. There's always that tiniest chance, so always be open-minded to that tiniest chance. So, and that allows me to listen to people without getting angry over their perspectives. It allows me to enter into conversations that normally people can't have because of emotionalness. And even being an extremely emotional person, I can detach emotion from a conversation that doesn't have to do with a physical act that happened to me in my life, let's say, right? Imagine that whoever goes to hell, he is thrown into the fire. When his skin is burned, his skin returns as it was, and then he is in the fire again, forever. Just think about it. You'll burn forever. Think about it. It is scary forever. But that's the thing, Assini. If fear of burning forever is the reason that you turn to God, is that not a cop-out? Is that not fake? Is that not coercion? How is that true love? Would that not, in and of itself, be false love that would taint God in and of itself? If your only reason for turning to God is fear-mongering? I think it's much better to praise the good reasons why you should versus the bad reasons why you shouldn't. It's the same with science. A true scientist is happy to be proven wrong or to find fault with an established scientific proof. Exactly, Sean, because you just want to know what the world is. You don't care what the world is. You just want to know what it is. You're not invested in what the answer is. You're invested in the answer. Also, in German philosophy, Glaub can be understood as Verwalten Igner Walhornren Mugen Überzugungen and Schlussfolgerungen die hier doch nicht zwingend logisch sein müssen. That is easy to say. Believing something as true without the need for it to be based on logical evidence. The Bible says if the most perfect God were to create a torture chamber for the souls that failed to be pure, then it would be better to cut your own hand off for stealing than to go there. I didn't understand what you said. Do you mean that burning forever is cruel, or what? No, I'm saying if the only reason why your belief and why you have your faith is because we need to clip a Scotty reading German. I should have done this. This would have been a much easier thing to do.
Hier war alten eigener Warnemen Gen, Überseegungen, UND Schlussfolgerungen, die hier jedoch nicht zwingend logisch sein müssen.
I wasn't even close. I wasn't even close. Okay, so Asini, if your whole reason of preaching your religion is to tell people that they will burn in hell, and the reason why you're preaching is, if the only reason you are good is to avoid the fire, then you aren't choosing to be good, you're choosing to avoid the fire. Sean, there you go. See, Sean's really good at taking my long rants of what I say and putting them into one fucking sentence. Sean, I'm so glad you're here to be able to do that. Plus, it's in writing, so it's a lot easier to do. It's the difference between, a lot of people say, like, for instance, if you're having an argument with someone, and someone's talking and someone's writing, the person who's writing always says it's better for the person who's talking. It's way better for the person who's writing than it is for the person who's talking. Discussion would be way better if it was in written form, because then you could go back and actually look at it and say, this is exactly what they said. I think all discussion should be in written form. All this is solved using the Kantian categorical imperative. I choose to be the best person I can because it's right. I have no faith in hell. That's a great way to look at it, Sean. And then there's the twisting of it to say, like, there's the world we live in now and the things that we abide by now that we think are good. But, you know, like for instance, like Asini said, like prostitution, porn, sex, alcohol, drugs, gambling. You mean you didn't choose to be a bad person or a bad person? No, I'm saying the reason that the reason that you're a good person is out of fear. You're not a good person because you're a good person. You're faking being a good person because you're afraid that if you don't fake being a good person, you're going to go to hell. So everything you do is fake, and you have no principles and no standing. You are simply regurgitating what you believe will make it so you don't go to hell. Versus someone who is genuinely good and will genuinely try to do the right thing. And that's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because those people that have the good intentions are usually doing it for bad reasons. And if you're doing a good thing for a bad reason, you're going to hell. So the simple fact of saying, I don't want you to burn in hell, is completely counterintuitive to preaching your religion, in my opinion. Does that make sense? Which is what I said, you should, what's the word? There's a philosophical argument about whether it's better to be a Christian or an atheist. The philosopher responds by saying, if there is a hell, it makes more sense to be a Christian. If there isn't, I lose nothing. Do what's right because it's right. Don't fear the fire that has nothing to do with you. You become a bad person for fear of hell and wish to enter heaven. If that's your only reason, Asini. If you don't believe and you are only acting out of fear. And I feel that is what a lot of people who are projecting religion, they are actually people who are acting out of fear and they do not actually believe what they're preaching. They are only preaching it to avoid the fire. Which in my opinion automatically puts them in the fire. On the flip side, if you don't believe, then how can you fear? It's true, Sean. But then comes the, what is fundamentally being a Christian in the fact of what is the minimum that gets you into heaven? Right? Like, every time I sin, I just love? Which is the fact of someone who has no understanding would still get into heaven, such as a baby or a child. Because they have no understanding, thus they've not eaten the apple, thus they would get into heaven because they do not know the difference between heaven and hell. Sins are more mistakes than anything else. Love yourself, love your neighbor, love your enemy, love those who don't believe. Love is the key. What do you say to that, Asini? Because I think at the end of the day, whether it's science, philosophy, psychology, religion, theology, or belief, it all comes down to, I can agree with Sean, even without it being any religious thing, that love is the definite power. Fear of hell and desire for heaven can be powerful motivators, but they are not the only things that make a good person. Mistake can always be forgiven. A sin is a conscious choice to do wrong. I think that's the difference, Sean. Ignorance in wake of action versus conscience in wake of action. You know, it's like by association. Fear of hell and desire for heaven are part of the motivation to do good, but they are not the only reasons why a person is righteous. Sincerity of intention, compassion, conscience, love of good, so it's sick, roll deeper, and more enduring reasons. Versus righteous combines fear and hope, and love of God and love of people. Not paying attention and knock the vase over and break it, you're forgiven. Take the vase in hand and deliberately break it, you're a criminal and must take make amends. Alright, I'll be right back. I can grab a drink. Every sin is a moral error, but not every error is a sin. Nobody taught you to keep it in your pants, and you have unwed sex, is it still a sin? I think not. It's people who know it's wrong and still do it that are sinning. There are many types of sins. Mortal sin, venial sin, original sin, structural sin. In this world, many oppressors die without punishment, and many oppressed die without justice. There is no accountability after death. Where is justice? The existence of hell guarantees that every oppressor will be held accountable no matter how much they've gotten away with in this world. I mean, to me, Asini, that idea is just so human that it's like, how do you say it? It's like wishful thinking. Cancer will be cut out, but a loving God doesn't torture his children. Or you could say that via proxy, Sean. Right? So there's a lot of different things that have nuance in that they can be very structurally questioning or questionable, right? It's like, at what point do you... At what point do you separate the... How do you say this? Like... The want for justice and as humans, 100% heaven and hell come out of that extrapolation. Because you know that people won't be judged... most people will get away with things in real life, and you don't want that to happen, so you create a construct within which people can't get away with everything, right? I think if a man forces intimacy on a woman, he will be reincarnated as a woman and a slave. They will learn they were wrong the hard way. For example, Sean is the devil trying to convince you otherwise. Can I be the devil? I mean, if you want to be, Raymond. Definitely, but I will say this, Raymond, no matter what you do, you could never be as bad as the devil. But I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm stating my position. Yeah, I think that's what we're all saying, right? Right? It's just like how we're not preaching. We're just stating how we all feel, what we all believe. Not everyone who sins or commits corruption goes straight to hell, because God is just and merciful. Some people repent, and some sins are forgiven by good deeds or by misfortunes that befall the person in his life. God's judgment is more precise than any human judgment, and there is never injustice. Just to me, Asini, that just seems so cop-out. You know? It's it like slightly invalidates itself, because it's like it's something that you want to believe, right? But I mean, that doesn't make it real or not real. I'm just saying, like, I can see the perspective that someone would say, oh, this is a human imagining out of fear. There's a phrase my brother said: the devil will roar and stomp as a dragon to conceal the truth. In this understanding, it means that whoever yells or slams their fists is wrong. True, Sean, because you shouldn't need to escalate to that. If the other person's not listening to you, then either you need to change the way that you're conversing, or you need to understand that that person's not... has absolutely no intention of listening to you. And then it's like, if you're engaging with someone is dishonest, that's not on you, that's on them. You break the connection. You'd be like, you're not being honest. I'm done here. It's like, and again, it's kind of a cop-out, but it's like, if they have no intention of listening to you, what's the point in having a conversation? That's where it's like, seeing your perspective but not changing my perspective is something people just don't understand. You believe someone is lost, pray for them. That's a loving thing to do. Move on. Yeah, exactly, right? You have to find that point of, like, I can't fix you. I'm not going to destroy myself because of you. Because at the end of the day, that's just the devil tempting you to fall from grace. They want you to stoop to their level. And they're willing to pretty much do anything to get you to stoop to their level. But I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, guys. Thanks for engaging with me with it. I know sometimes it can be a little divisive and there's another word, but I don't remember what it is. But yeah, something like that. Alright, back to the story. Before the sun set on this same day, I ran the same risk. Madden was implacable. Rather, to be more accurate, he was obliged to be implacable. An Irishman in the service of England, a man suspected of equivocal feelings of not an actual treachery. How could he fail to welcome and seize upon this extraordinary piece of luck, the discovery, capture, and perhaps the deaths of 2 agents of Imperial Germany? I went up to my bedroom. Absurd though the gesture was, I closed and locked the door. I threw myself down on my narrow iron bed and waded on my back. On the Day of Judgment, you will know that this was the most important discussion in your life. I mean, you can think that, Assini, but I have had many discussions with many people about religion, about Islam, and everything like that. So, this isn't the first and it won't be the last. But I still believe that God is consciousness, and the nuance of understanding doesn't matter to him. Only the genuineness of the understanding matters to him. The never-changing rooftops filled the window, and the hazy 6 o'clock sun sang and hung in the sky. So it's like, if anything, everything you said just reinforces more what I believe. It seemed incredible that this day, a day without warnings or omens, might be that of my implacable death. In despite of my death, Father, in despite of having been a child in one of the symmetrical gardens of Hai Fang, was I to die now? I really hope you know the truth. Well, I mean, it's understanding. It's not words, it's understanding. And from my understanding, despite the words that we're using, we're telling the same story, Assini. We're using different words in a different method in a different genre, but we are telling the same story. That there is something greater than us that we can strive to be a part of, or we can choose to run away from it and separate ourselves from it. And I don't necessarily know whether one is good or bad. All I know is that the human definition of good or bad comes down to how the actions that you take affect other people. And that is the only thing that matters, is what you do and how that affects other people. Everything beyond that is nuance and breviary. And, like, human construct, and, like, the wanting to be right, the need to, the need to be validated. I think that's a big thing, too, is you shouldn't need to be validated. You shouldn't... Your ideas don't need to be validated. Your belief doesn't need to be validated. Yes, but you think that religion is only about believing in God. No, I don't, Asini. I believe that what we understand as religion is a simple human construct on the understanding of something that's greater than us. And rationalizing that understanding. Because there are religions that have multiple gods. Religions that don't have gods. Religions where you are God. Because this is like my ultimate thing. Okay, if you were God, so imagine you're God. Eventually, you would have done everything. And you'd get bored. So what's the ultimate solution to that? You make yourself forget that you're God. Oh, what a fucking roller coaster. What a fucking roller coaster. And to me, that's existence. We are all individual pieces of God spread across all of reality. See, but Asini, you can say all wrong, but that's not proof, that's your belief. Sure, I respect that that's not what you think, but in my belief, that it is. Islam simply puts the belief in one God, the creator of the universe, and that he sent messengers to teach us how to live with justice and mercy. The most important aspects of Islam are threefold. Religion is what you do, faith is what you believe without question. People with no faith can be religious, such as religiously watching every sports event in which a specific team is playing. Exactly, Sean. That's a very good way of putting it. But what I find is when I say something, Asini says that you're wrong. Okay, well, where's the proof that I'm wrong? Because I'm not saying you're wrong, Asini. I'm saying both possibilities could be true. But you're saying, no, only one possibility is true. And my question is, well, how do you know? Worship. Like prayer and fasting, it is not just a ritual, but rather a means of self-discipline, strengthening the relationship with God. Okay, Asini. But what if your way to pray to God, morals, honesty, trustworthiness, helping people, justice, these are all an essential part of religion. But they're not, Asini, because most religions preach death to other religions, including Islam. So, your own religion contradicts its own moral by the simple fact of spreading its own religion. So if you were honest, you wouldn't be able to say that I was wrong. Because I worship consciousness, I have morals. And I stand by my morals and my principles. Even when it comes to, like, self-detrimental advocation, like eugenics or something like that. As I said before, if you believe that someone is wrong, lost, pray for them and move on. God gave us the right to make mistakes, so who you'd attempt to stop us from our choices? Exactly, Sean. So that's why it's like, now my problem, Asini, is with you saying wrong. Islam is the true religion because it declares the oneness of God without partner. Its book is preserved without distortion, and it presents a complete and just way of life that is in harmony with human nature. And Asini, you think that that idea makes it divine. I agree that even if all three of those things is Christianity says the same thing. Exactly, Sean. So, like, Asini, even if all of those things are true, it still doesn't mean anything. It still has no divinity in it. It is created by human hands with human minds. So, even if it preaches do good things, good is a human construct. Like, justice is a human construct. Right? So to say that these things are fundamentally of God is not proof. That's all I'm saying. My problem is you saying that it's proof when it's logically counterintuitive. Right? Because you would think we are told that God dictated our scriptures as well. So if God told us we are right, then how can you prove we aren't? You can't, Sean, and that's what I'm trying to say, is you can't. There is no way to prove that either side is right or wrong. So my stance is all sides are right in genuine thought. As long as you're being honest, truthful, thought-provoking, and Islam believes in the oneness of God, the Quran is preserved, and the worship is the way of life, the comprehensive. Believes in the Trinity, the Bible has been distorted, and salvation is through faith in Jesus, with greater emphasis on the rituals and moral principles. And again, Asini, well, which is why I keep telling people to live their own best life and not to worry about others' understanding of the truth. And that's kind of the way that I preach it too, Sean, except I want to know. I want to discuss it. I want to live it. I want to feel it. I want to know it. I want to calculate it. And I want to come to a conclusion. Because without knowledge, you can't come to a true understanding. And I don't want to remain ignorant. I want to become knowledgeable. And the only way to become knowledgeable is to discuss it. So what I'm saying, Asini, is even if everything that you say is factually true, that still doesn't mean any part of it is divine or from God. And proof is like a tangible, unalterable perspective, which in this case you can't have in a theoretical. You can't have a concrete theoretical understanding because the idea of theoretical is that it's not concrete. It doesn't fall within the normal framework. The whole point is that it's a constructed framework in order to perceive ideas in different lights. I have been in churches where God's love is obvious, even when no other person is there. I have been in churches where, despite the amazing people within, it feels sick and wrong to be there. And that can also come down to, like, you know, picking up on different types of energies and stuff like that, right? And it's like the idea of feeling that a place is holy or a place is cursed. And I think that can all be broken down to, in the most basic of categories, consciousness. Because consciousness leaves an imprint on reality. So consciousnesses that are pushing positive feelings create a positive energy barrier, and that's holy. Negative thought processes and projections create a negative space, and that's cursed, demonic, evil. And you can break that down to two simple factors: positive energy versus negative energy. And I think adding the religious aspect of it is just making it complicated, when you can just basically say that it's energy. A good church is entirely donated time, donated effort, donated material, no aggrandizement, just a place to share faith with others. What is the crime and murder rate in America? In my Muslim country, I can open the door at night without fear. If it doesn't matter, you're a Christian or a Muslim, can you leave the door open? Asini, I'm Canadian and I'm neither. I'm a spiritual atheist. I believe in consciousness. I don't believe in... You know, I believe that we use different words, but we all have the same definitions. And I would say, Asini, there are places in your country that you can leave your door open at night, and there are places in your country that you can't leave your door open at night. So, I don't see the correlation between that. Same with, like, crime and murder rates and stuff like that, is... That's not necessarily a correlation, right? Because there are other sins. So, for instance, America might have a higher rate of murder, alcoholism, rape, violence, and, like, death, but your country might have more, I leave the door open all the time. Being a Christian doesn't make you safe or not. However, a great number of deaths in the US are caused by radical Islam. Does that mean all those who are of Islam are radical? No. Exactly. It's like, being a Christian has nothing to do with it, and that's what I'm trying to say, Asini, is that you're projecting onto us this religious aspect, whereas I'm trying to say, try to take your mindset out of the religious aspect and break it down to fundamental ideas and concepts that don't relate to religion and don't have a religious connotation but have the same denotion and definition, like God and consciousness, spirit and consciousness. Like different planes of existence, different levels of consciousness, different existences. The difference between animals and humans. The understanding. So, being an Islamic country isn't the reason why your country is safe. Right? There may be absolutely no correlation between that. People may just be, you know, the laws are harsh and you're following the laws. China's a great place like that. You know, but China, I wouldn't want to live in China. But I bet China's pretty fucking safe until it's not. It's safe except for from the government. So, we also have many faiths in this country, including Islam. This causes tension across the entire country, and then there are those who have no faith. They will not stop doing something because of our faith. We do not fear death because we know where we are going, same as you. Muslims don't hate people of other religions. On the contrary, they love you and treat you well. But in America, you think Muslims are terrorists. That's the difference between them. But Assini, it's like factual that there are Muslims that are bad people. Like, that's what I don't understand. Can you not... My country is safe because 99% are Muslims. No radical Muslims, not normal Muslims. But normal Muslims are not Muslims, they're normal people. Right? Assini, it's not because they're Muslims, it's because they're normal people. Does that make sense? Like, if you look at on an individual basis level, right? It's 2% of the people that do 95% of the crime. So even if 95% of the people in America were all Christians, just like they were Muslims in your country, Assini, you would still have that 2% causing 95% of the problems. And I bet in your country, you have 2% of the people causing 95% of the problems. And I don't think religion has anything to do with that. Because morality is not derived from religion. Morality is derived from existence. Yes, normal people of the Muslim faith are great people. Their faith has nothing to do with them being good. How do those same people being raised as Christian, they'd still be good people? Exactly, Sean. If they were raised atheists, they would still be good people. The last time I heard of a murder in Morocco was in 2017. But Assini, like I was saying, there are other kinds of crimes as well, right? Like, they may be crimes in the West, but not crimes in your country. They may be crimes in your country, but not crimes in the West. So a dictation of law, the law is not moral. The law is just a dictation of society. When people start to believe that the law is moral, crime has more to do with financial instability. By the way, I am not asleep. Callie, have you been listening to us this entire time? By the way, how did the stream go, Callie? I had your stream up for like the first like 40 minutes or so, chilling with you, but then we needed to get into the stories. But we definitely had a good time. So did you guys carry on with the conversation after I left? Go to sleep. Exactly, Sean. Exactly. Couldn't resist. Man, you left Mary had a shower, chat got quiet, I got bored with the game, I stopped stream. No, Callie! What? It happens. We should, next time, Callie, we should do a stream together. And we should go on Discord. And we should fuck around. Oh, dude, Callie, I just had an idea. You know what we should do? Thought you were going to make a 3-sentence story, or was that something else? Oh, no, I did that, Sean. Guys, check it out. I made my story. Actually, let's just go. Let's just go here. Let's see how it did. Let's see how it did. Alright guys, let me know what you think.
My fellow Americans, this is a most dire situation. 7 million Americans dead. North Korea has taken accountability for the nukes that went off tragically an hour ago in Washington, New York, and Los Angeles. We are now at war. My fellow Americans, this is a most dire situation. 7 million Americans dead. North
What do you guys
Korea
think?
has taken accountability for the nukes that went off tragically an hour ago in Washington, New York, and Los Angeles. We are now at war. My fellow Americans, this is a most dire situation. 7 million Americans.
Oh, that one was pretty good. Pretty basic, but you know, it is what it is. I think anyone who targets DC is an idiot. Target Yellowstone instead. Wait, dude, Sean, if you nuked Yellowstone, I'm pretty sure you would fuck the entire world. If Yellowstone blows, we are talking global fucking annihilation. I think that would be the last thing you would want to do. Like, we're talking extinction level event. Like, the only humans alive would be the ones on the fucking space station. Nah, but it would cut the population way... No, I'm serious, Sean. End of humanity would not wipe out humanity. Catastrophic lava flows, likely extremely low. We'd be insane, though. How far would the reach be? Most of the US would become an ocean. How far would the range be? Yellowstone erupted. How much of the world would be affected? I guess that's a better way to say it. Significant. It doesn't say a percentage. I'm just gonna go to fucking goddamn. This is why I go to Grok. Yellowstone erupted. What would be what percentage of the world would be affected? On the day of judgment, your mother, father, brother, sister, wife, or son will not care about you. No one will care about you. Everyone just wants to go to heaven. Yeah, that makes sense, Asini, because no one actually really cares about you. Everyone only actually really cares about themselves, and by proxy of themselves care about you. But they only truly care about themselves. That is human nature. That's why I want drilling rigs to pop the crust and release some pressure, at least back to the point Old Faithful is an hourly event again. Man, this is really being a bitch. Why is it taking so long to figure this shit out? So means 100% of the world will be affected to some degree, though the severity would decrease the distance from the eruption site. It's not extinction level current event for humanity. Okay. So we were, what? We're talking like 60 to 70% of the population, but not the entirety. So like of the population would remain after, let's say, 100 years. So you killed 10% of the planet. 800 million people. That seems a little low. In these factors, the conservative estimate was just 80 to 90% of the global population relative to today's could remain after 100 years. Assuming moderate recovery. Initial 10 to 20% loss. Search for the two C's that never meet. These are rough estimates. And that's a huge thing with like certain like population centers, right? You could say it's 10% of the world population, but it's like 40% of the land mass or something like that, right? Because of the distribution of things. So what am I looking for? Two C's never meet. The North Sea and the Baltic Sea in Denmark. Oh, these are the ones. Oh yeah, I know of this. The sea line, because this is one is fresh water and one is salt water. So they don't mix, so it creates this barrier between the two of them. And it's like the specific salinity of the water. Is that what you were talking about? Whoa! then I reflected that all things happen to one, precisely now. Century follows century and things happen only in the present. There are countless men in the air, on the land, and at sea, and all that really happens to me. Do you see this? This is the greatness of God's creation. Yes, Assini, it's called science. And if God is real, God created science. But the fact that science exists doesn't prove that God exists. I don't think you understand the fundamental understanding of the word proof. There is evidence, and you build up evidence, and enough evidence builds up that you eventually get proof. Because you can relate back to these things and say, this is the reason why. This is the correlation. This is how you can predict it, and this is how you can manipulate it. The almost unbearable memory of Madden's long horse face put an end to those wandering thoughts. In the midst of my hatred and terror, now that it no longer matters to me to speak of terror, now that I have outwitted Richard Madden, now that my neck hankers for a hangman's noose, I knew that the fast-moving and doubtless happy soldier did not suspect that I possessed the secret. The name of the exact site of the new British artillery park on the Ancre. A bird streaked across the misty sky, and absently I turned it into an airplane, and then that airplane into many in the skies of France, shattering the artillery park under a rain of bombs. If only my mouth, before it should be silenced by a bullet, could shout this name in such a way that it could be heard in Germany. My voice, my human voice, was weak. How could it reach the ear of the chief? Well, give me science on how sky doesn't fall. So there's these things called atoms, and they're really, 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 really small forms of matter, and they bounce around and bump into each other. And the more of them that you have in a condensed area, the harder they hit each other. So the higher the pressure. And this builds on top of each other. So the reason the sky doesn't fall out of the sky is because the sky is made out of particles that are stacked on top of each other. So imagine you're inside of a ball pit, and you're walking through a ball pit. Why don't the balls at the top of the ball pit fall? Well, because they're touching other balls. And that's basically the simplest way I can put it. And then you have differentials of temperature, pressure, and like chemical consistency, right? Certain gases are heavier than other gases, different densities create different heights, and this is why you can have, for instance, things float on air. I don't know, man. It's all bullshit. Well, then explain to me, this. If my explanation doesn't work for you, balloon floating on gas. Maybe ball floating on glass? Yeah, shit like this. So you fill the area with gas.
My voice sound, oh, it's getting there.
Right?
Here's what we're gonna do. You pick up the boat.
And then you look at the weight of something.
Put it here like this. You hold onto that end. Okay, ready? Just set it in here like this. And we're gonna let go. Ready, set.
It's
floating
heavier
on the
than...
sea of
because the
sulfur.
air is heavier.
So cool.
That is literally science explained Right there. It's floating in air because you have the gas difference and the pressure difference between the different gases and the collection, and how the mass, size, and buoyancy of the weight of it. Quran says God raised the heavens and placed them firmly in their place, and that they are under his control and cannot collapse except by his will. Yeah, but that doesn't give you anything to work off of, Assini. Whereas saying, like, the understanding of gravity to be able to replicate it is. It's the same way a steel ship can float on an ocean despite its weight. Exactly. It's science. Now, whether you say science is God or not, it's the understanding and predictability in order to replicate it. So basically, you have no substance in what you're saying because you can't replicate placing something in the heavens. But, oh wait, yes we can. Using science, we can replicate putting something in the heavens. And that is satellites. The ISS. Going to the moon. So, the acts that we have performed as humans, whether you want to call that science or God, is simply understanding it. And all you're saying is, oh, anytime we understand anything, it's actually not what we understand. But our understanding allows us to predict it to be able to, like, reenact it. So, I'm sorry, but the one that can predict and reenact versus the one that can't, the one that can predict and reenact is the one that's true. If you believe that science will answer every question, that's a pure faith. Since logically, no matter how many questions we answer, we are left with the question, why is that true? Exactly, Sean. And then there's the last question, which we read yesterday by Isaac Asimov, about the idea of the last question is in existence is the question of can existence be created? And the so-called AI quantum hyperspace computer, I love that story. Yeah, we read that yesterday. The idea that God is simply an abstract of something like that, right? That God could be what we perceive, and consciousness is just a machine that was created at some point in time. It was, can the effect of entropy be reversed? Yeah, exactly. The exact question asked. Because eventually there will be nothing left in the universe because of entropy. Particles will be too far apart to be able to do anything. Called the heat death of the universe, where all heat dies. Because at all points in time, the universe is cooling down, and eventually it will die. So what happens at that point? Is that just the end of existence? Or is it a new type of existence? Consciousness still exists inside of that space? Is space and time gone simply because there's no matter within space? If time is simply the movement of matter and there's no matter that moves, how can there be time? Yet we have evidence that our universe is not the only one, or even the oldest one. We have found planets that, according to our readings, predate our own universe. Which, Sean, brings into question, is our science and fundamental understanding of the universe wrong? When we have contradictions like that, we have to take a step back and say, is the science right if we're getting these conclusions? But, you know, at the end of the day, it all adds up, so it has to be. 2 plus 2 is 4. Simple as that. Don't argue with it, just accept it. You've done all you can to try and prove that it's not. Same with like the idea of multiplying by 0 versus dividing by 0. You can multiply by 0, but you can't divide by 0. Because dividing by 0 will get you infinite. The opposite of 0. Whereas multiplying by 0 just gets you 0. I'd say that we call a universe is a galactic cluster and not only one of many such galactic clusters. Well, Sean, there's a difference between the observable universe and the universe. The observable universe is whatever light will actually reach us. And over a period of time, things will be so far away due to the expansion of the universe that the expansion will literally be faster than the light. So light from those areas will never ever reach us. So there's the observable universe that we can see, and then there's what's outside of the observable universe. And our extrapolation is, if all of the observable universe is homogeneous, then outside the observable universe should also be homogeneous. But you could say the same thing, Sean, if you zoomed in enough to even such a large enough space on, like, Earth, for instance, and it was just desert. You could say, oh, the entire planet is desert because of, like, a survivorship bias. Because you're like, well, this entire area is desert. It's such a vast area, of course, and it's all the same. So there are theories that there are different biomes of universes, and the light from our observable universe is only within, let's say, this one part of it. So there could be a desert type of universe, a jungle type of universe, in the fact of the laws of physics could be different. Everything could be different within those, and they could all just be within smaller spaces of themselves. And then there's the bubble theory with, like, black holes, where the matter that gets sucked into a black hole becomes its own universe, and then that becomes the entropy within its own black hole of it expanding and eating more, while the black hole grows smaller, everything inside of it expands. And it kind of reverses how, like, inverse space. And that's how, at every moment, the actual expanding of the universe is actually every particle in the universe halving in size. Or just, like, shrinking in size. And gravity has a huge role to play on that as to the reason of things that would connect together and things wouldn't. And that's the, like, weak and strong nuclear force. Sorry, I'm late. What did I say? You were talking about the heavens being placed, and then I was talking about how humans can do that with satellites. How using science we can replicate the effects of God. Essentially. Is that hubris? Well, it can't be, because we've proven that we can do it. It would be hubris if we couldn't do it. But there is the hubris in, like, flying too close to the sun and not understanding what we're doing, right? But that's what science is all about, is finding understanding. Except one, we can't create matter from nothingness. That's actually not true, Sean. At least not theoretically true. So I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding of quantum mechanics and how particles pop in and out of existence. So you have a positive and a negative that pop into existence, they hit each other, and they nullify, creating energy. That is the cosmic microwave background of the universe, essentially. The leftover energy of everything. We manipulate matter that exists. We can't create even a particle without existing matter to work with. So, the idea of matter and antimatter is that when those particles pop into existence, these theoretical quantum particles of probability pop into existence and annihilate themselves. If you could make gravity strong enough that once those particles popped into existence, instead of being pulled together and annihilating each other, they were pulled apart and sent to opposite sides of the universe. So if you had matter on one side of the universe and antimatter on the other side of the universe, and there was nothing down the middle, it was just emptiness because of like pulling gravity apart, they would fundamentally be the same particles in the same existence, only mirrors of each other. And you would continuously have an expanding universe that grew bigger because it was always pulling those energies out of the ether. But this comes down to a fundamental understanding of why did God forbid pork? Asini, the reason why people believe that pork is biblically or like religiously not eaten is because if you ate pork and it was cooked the wrong way, you would get worms and die. So it's actually a food safety reason why pork was forbidden. Because if you didn't cook it properly, it was not good. Pork has no sweat glands and thus can't excrete toxins. So if you cook it improperly and eating it, it has a negative effect on humans. Same thing with chicken. But chicken you just need to cook thoroughly. Whereas pork, you can't cook it like you can cook steak, for instance. Another question, why did God forbid the apple? Did the apple truly contain the knowledge of good and evil, or was it a metaphor for good and evil? And by eating the apple, God gave man the knowledge of good and evil and said, here is your reward for disobeying me. Either improper cooking or letting the pork eat toxic foods can cause bad things to happen when people eat them. That's, the scientific, logical understanding of why pork is religiously forbidden. You can extrapolate most what's it called? I'd say like habits maybe to a point of people based upon like habits become fanatical when they're so widespread and universal. Why to the Hindu forbidden eating beef though? Because they think it's their ancestors reincarnated. Yeah, and you wouldn't want to eat the soul of your ancestor. And my thing is, well, if eating beef and eating pork is gonna get me to hell, life sucks. Fuck it. You know? It is what it is. I guess I'm deemed for hell. Right? It's like, there's no point in fighting against the machine. Sorry, if I came back as a cow, I'd want to be eaten ASAP. Yeah. Pretty much, Sean. Reincarnate me again, man. Fuck this. Why is suicide forbidden? Suicide is forbidden. If you want to go with a religious route, it's because you've been given life by God, and that's basically a slap in God's face. If you want to go by society, then it's because life sucks, and killing yourself is not a way out, and shouldn't be a way out. So in order to hold people accountable in life, we've made suicide forbidden so that people won't do it. It is simply a social construct of power. In order to control people, we have made it so if you kill yourself, you go to hell. And then we make the worst possible world for them to live in, and make them slaves to it, but we tell them that if they kill themselves, they go to hell. That is a power construct. You leave behind those who depend on you. That's wrong in both religion and law. I just think it's purely a power construct. Because if people just killed themselves because they didn't care, because life was bad, they'd have to make life good because people would just kill themselves. But they want people to live in the horror that is life that they've created and have hope so that they can do their bidding so people can stand on top of them. That's human nature. Islam considers that life is not entirely the property of the individual, but rather a trust from God, and man must preserve it. Yeah, that's the religious aspect of it. I gave you life, therefore don't squander it. Which, again, I think is completely fair. I'm off, need to cook. Alright, Sean. Enjoy your food, good sir. Thanks for stopping in and hanging out. You know what happens when you die and get buried? You go back into the earth, and the essence of you is consumed by other bits of life, and you are returned to nature. You are returned from whence you came, dust to dust. But what if you're burned? What if there's nothing left of you but ash? Smoke and ash. How could it reach the ear of the chief? The ear of that sick and hateful man who knew nothing of Runeberg or of me, except that we were in Staffordshire. A man who's sitting in his two-aired Berlin office leafed infinitely through newspapers, looking in vain for news from us. I said aloud, I must flee. I sat up on the bed, the senseless and perfect silence, as if Madden was already peering at me. Something, perhaps merely a desire to prove my total penury to myself, made me empty out my pockets. I found just what I knew I was going to find. The American watch, the nickel-plated chain and the square coin, the key ring with the useless but compromising keys to Runeberg's office, the notebook, a letter which I decided to destroy at once and which I did not destroy. A 5-shilling piece, 2 single shillings and some pennies, a red and blue pencil, a handkerchief, and a revolver with a single bullet. Absurdly, I held it and weighed it in my hand to give myself courage. No, man, you are asked 3 questions about your religion, and Christianity is not the correct answer. If you do not answer, you will be tormented in your grave until the day of resurrection. I mean, you can believe that, Asini, but that's not visibly what actually happens to you. Like, that's not physically, empirically what happens to your body. Right? So you can abstract it in your mind as much as you want, and say whatever you want. Because I can say the same thing where I say, okay, but when you die, your consciousness is stuck where you are. And to me, heaven is being able to live with your own mind for all of eternity, and hell is not being able to live with your own mind for eternity. So essentially, you're just a ball of consciousness stuck in the same spot that you died. and you just exist there forever. And that can be equivocally measured as EMP fields by science through technology. And if you get strong enough EMP fields together, you can create light. So, via this, if you have enough people die in the same place that their consciousnesses create enough of an EMP field to actually project their consciousnesses into reality, you now have a scientific explanation for ghosts. Vaguely, I thought that a pistol shot can be heard for a great distance. I know that. If you dig up the grave of the murderer, you'll find his body intact, but he is suffering in a way that only God knows. And then that brings me back to this concept again, Assini, is how can we dictate to know the will of God as humans? Because a book that was written by humans says so? Yeah, that's what we call a circular logical argument. Its foundational basis only relies on the context to the foundational basis. The more things that you can extrapolate a scenario to, the more valid that extrapolation, right? Indala! What? Yo, how's it going, Indala? How are you, good sir? Sorry, I missed the movie night, Indala. My sister and my nephew came over. So, I kind of got distracted, and next thing I knew it was like 5 o'clock, and I was like, fuck! But it is what it is. Next Sunday, movie night. So we are talking, Indala, we are talking about religion, consciousness, and science. And how fundamentally all three of these are like branches of the same thing. Religion is trying to understand, consciousness is the ability to understand, and science is replication of understanding. And my belief is that all three of these components are required in order to basically be the best you can be in existence. Well, information ideally should never be where you are, and a 1/4 ratio to extrapolate is all I know. I have no idea what you mean by that, Indala. Ideally should never be where you are. A 1/4 ratio to extrapolate. A 1-to-4 ratio. I'm not 100% in what you're saying there, Indala. It's 5 a.m. and I have to go to high school at 8 a.m. trying to convince you. How else would do that? Honestly, Assini, someone who doesn't understand. Because, like, no matter what you say, everything that you say is all smoke and mirrors, right? There's no empirical evidence to recreate what you're saying other than the logical scientific evidence that I'm giving you in order to state proof of the statements that you're making. So you make a statement about something in a religion, and I say, okay, well, let's extrapolate that to consciousness and science, and let's replicate it, and let's go through the process of saying, how do we get there? And as far as our basic understanding and accepted understanding of reality, I've done that with everything that you've said. And all you can say is, I believe. Which I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I have evidence to back up what I'm saying. But only from my own perspective. I'm not certain that's the best way to know something. Well, there's a difference between knowing and believing. Right? Like, I know that this is going to fall when I drop it. I don't believe that it's going to fall. I know it's going to fall. Right? Like, I don't know that I'm going to rehydrate when I drink this water. It's a fact that I'm going to rehydrate when I drink this water. It's a noticeable reaction in reality. That's the difference. Whereas philosophy, psychology, theology, and hypotheticals don't fall under that category. Right? You can say whatever you want about basically anything. See you later, bro. Alright, have a good one, Asini. Thanks for talking, man. It was a good conversation. But, like, me saying the reason that I get hydrated from this water is because of God and not because of the bodily functions of reality, I think is, like, I really hope you look this up. Why would I look it up, Asini? Like, you said... you sound very, very, like... what do you call this? Like, unmoved with being able to state. That sounds more like silly ideation about what thoughts are meaning. If you ground in faith, okay, but the water just is. No, but I mean, like for instance, Indala, Asini asked me why the sky doesn't fall out of, like, why the sky doesn't fall. And I said because particles stack on top of each other and hit against each other in order to imagine being in, like, a ball pit and there's balls all around you. The top balls don't fall because there's balls underneath them. But as humans, we have replicated that to the point where we can go into space. With wind, the sky does move and cloud fall. I mean, technically, yes, the clouds fall out of the sky, but he was talking about the sky itself, like the firmament. And I was like, but then we can put things in the sky. And he said that God raised the sky up and put the sky there. But then humans can also do that, because we have satellites, the International Space Station, the Chinese Space Station, like, other things in orbit. Like, our ability to manipulate and understand the real world is fundamentally more important than a belief system that tells you that the world is fairy tales and fairy dust, and your understanding is actually gibberish, and my interpretation is the way. Because Indala, what Asini keeps stating is that the Quran says it, therefore it is. And I said, but the Quran is written by a human, and humans are fallible, so believing in something that is written by a human, therefore, is a self-contradiction. So by its own definition, you shouldn't listen to it. But the book did not cause water. No. Indala, what I'm saying with the water reference is when I ingest this water, it's not the water going into my cells and re-energizing my cells and then taking the oxygen and hydrogen that's inside of it. It's just I drink this water, and via proxy by drinking this water, God hydrates me. To me, that's what Assini is saying when he says, oh, no, it's not science, it's actually God. He's saying, when I drink this water, God is rehydrating me. It's not the water, it's not the particles, it's not the chemicals in it, it's not the molecules, it's not its physical existence, it's God is rehydrating me. Yes, I'm stating God does not act in you. Exactly, Indala. And Assini is saying that yes, God does. If gambling was not forbidden, I would have gambled my whole life that Islam is the true religion. Assini, if the religion is the reason why you didn't gamble, then you don't understand gambling, because you shouldn't gamble because the gambling is set against you. And it's not true, Assini. You gamble every single day. Every decision you make is a gamble. So just because gambling has to do with currency, nah, gambling is saying, do I put my left foot forward or my right foot forward? Gambling is saying, do I wear a black shirt today or a white shirt today? Gambling says, do I have a haircut or do I not have a haircut? We try to master before we know. Exactly. You're taking a bet on a situation based upon previous information and statistical evidence. I didn't mean that, but there are things in science and things that even science doesn't know about. Exactly, Assini. So you're saying things that science doesn't know about are God. Whereas science has proven over time that people say that and then science figures out what it is. So just because you say, oh, it's God because science hasn't figured it out yet, doesn't mean that it's God. Now, I'm not saying it's not God. Because like I said, Indala, I believe that God is just consciousness. And that God is a universal consciousness. And that extrapolating everything in existence down to consciousness is the best way to do it. That consciousness is fundamental, and like when you die, your consciousness returns to the great consciousness. And our bodies are vessels that pick up tiny pieces of that consciousness. Like your TV picks up, or like your browser picks up one web page of the entire internet. You can never have the entire internet on one web page, just like you can't have all of consciousness in one vessel. But when you leave your vessel, consciousness expands out and joins the rest. Like, can science explain how jinn disappear and disguise themselves? Technically, Assini, yes, with light. Using quantum mechanics, it's possible. Light, form, energy, frequency, ghosts. Ghosts, like I said already, ghosts are consciousness that is either so powerful and so attached to reality that it even after death, it has a physical existence where it can project itself as light. Light, like all things are consciousness, and it's using the waveform function of wave-particle duality in order to invoke a reaction into reality. And at the end of the day, that's what consciousness does. Consciousness evokes into reality. You must think before you do, even if it's subconscious. So there is a scientific explanation if you extrapolate to consciousness is real, consciousness is fundamental. But you have to put on these stipulations throughout it, right? And context. And I fully admit that, yes, it is with a certain context and a certain set, right? So, I'm not saying I'm right, I'm saying it's possible. And my problem, Assini, is you're saying, I'm right, it's not possible. And all I'm saying is I don't think that's a good attitude to have, because that leads you to fundamentalism. Because you never truly question why you believe what you believe, or why you're being told the things that you're being told. And if you come to the conclusions that you have now through that critical thinking, that's an extreme positive, because you have gone through the process and come out with this conclusion. But I feel like there is this set of point where it needs to be said that I don't think I'm right, and I don't think that you're wrong. But the fact that you think I'm wrong makes me question the validity of what you say. Because if you're not able to take a step back and even have the conceptual idea that you might be wrong and I might be right, I think is a fallacy on your part. And that leads to a bad place when there is no ability in your mind to perceive the other person's side. Does that make sense? So I think it's a huge problem with people thinking that either I'm right because I'm talking about it. There's not a way to know, is there? But you could converse instead. Exactly, Indal. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's just over and over, every time I try to converse with Assini, he simply states, no, you are wrong. And then I say, okay, you're absolutely allowed to believe that. But all I'm saying is that this is what I believe. Does that make sense, Indala? And then he is like trying to convince me otherwise, and I'm trying to say that if you can't even look at my perspective, you're not going to be able to convince me because you're not looking at my perspective. You need to look at my perspective and say, okay, what is it about my perspective that makes me think this? Add that to your perspective and say, oh, here's the connecting dots. Oh, these three things might make you change your mind about your perspective. Like, to me, that's the extrapolation. My last request is to listen to a minute of the Quran. I mean, sure, but like what I'm saying is, no matter what the Quran says, I'm not going to say, oh, that's 100% real, there can be no other interpretation of it, that is 100% what it is, and there's nothing else to it. There's no nuance, there's no exception, there's no nothing, it is simply is. I don't believe that that's how the world works. Yeah, there's not really a reason to be heard. Sometimes it's only because we want to like who they are. I could agree with that, Indala. And that's why it's like I'm open to the discussion. And you can completely probably convince me and change my mind. People do it all the time. But you have to do it with facts. You can't simply state, this book says that when you die, you will be judged and go to hell. So I believe that I go to hell. And there's no, like, fundamental knowledge that's going to change my mind about that isn't there. Who is this guy? But it doesn't say... Okay. But where does it say anything about, like, the research that he's done? You know, like, what institutes did he do research at? Where is the evidence to proclaim what he's saying? Has he had, like, a religious experience? Like, an out-of-body experience? But sometimes acceptance of a view is more important to the relationship than seeing it all as a realist way. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's an agree to disagree. Like, I don't believe what you believe, but I don't believe that what you believe is wrong. Both of these things can be true. I can believe that I'm right without believing that you're wrong. Because I fundamentally think that we are saying the same definitions with different words. God to me is consciousness. Faith to me is understanding. And belief is critical thinking. Science is extrapolation of the real world. So, like, no individual piece of knowledge or information is going to invalidate or validate a certain thought, right? Well, I know that power is through, and that at the end you want to know way to you. Want to know way to you. And to reason that power is all. Does this make sense? No, Indala. Power is through, and at the end you want to know way to you. And the reason that power is all. Not 100% getting that. Like, breathing is power. Do you mean like energy? Like, when I think power is like different than energy. Just watch a video? Alright, we'll post a link, Cassini, then. I'm 100% down to watch a video. Which video do you want me to watch? That's okay, Indala. You could try rephrasing it. And again, to say Asini, the main thing is like... So, like, Indala, one of his main points, Asini's main points, is that the Bible is corrupted and has been changed, but the Quran is not corrupted and has not been changed. And I said, even if that's a true fact, that the Quran's never been changed, the Quran was still written by a man, so it's like a self-imploding problem, right? Like a circular logic. It can only revert back to itself. It can never extrapolate to anything else. I mean, like, power is either through you or the other beings. But also a stick is a power of shape, but it doesn't have to be just energy, and I like Quran. See, and I never said there's nothing wrong with the Quran. I just think taking the Quran because he was protected, I don't think taking the Quran as word for word, this is exactly how God wants you to live life, and you should never think any other way, never have critical thinking, and never change the way that you ever act in your entire... Like, I think that's ridiculous, and if I was God, I wouldn't want that. So I think, what would I do if I was God? And I'm like, well, this is what I would do if I was God. But it's like that's still coming at it from a human perspective. So everything has to be placed in that human perspective when you say, no, this is divinity and this isn't. And the only reason for you stating that this is divinity is because it speaks of God. I'm sorry, but I don't believe you. Right? Like, you can think it all you want, but like, there's not enough evidence for me to believe that. Sure, it could be true. But I mean, all the evidence in the world says that it's not. So what are you going to go with? The evidence or not the evidence? I'd go with the evidence. But Asini, what video do you want me to watch? Like post a video, a link, and I'll watch a video. But I'm not just going to randomly go through and try and find a random video or something like that. My YouTube is fucking lagging. Not a single letter was distorted because it was protected from distortion, and copies of it were written and preserved in minds and in books. But Asini, you can say that all you want, but people say the same thing about the Bible. Right? So just because you say it doesn't make it true. Just because people believe it doesn't make it true. I've seen unofficial Qurans. Yeah, of course. And I mean, like, again, let's say, so you said it was written in 700 AD, and there's the original manuscript from 700 AD. What language is it written in? Do you speak that language? Can you read that language? Has that language been preserved and not modified in order to make it so the scripture says something different because the translations are different? Was the language completely different at the time and meanings of words were different? All words have multiple interpretations, so Asini, for you to say that there's no such thing as a secondary interpretation of the words in the Quran, to me just means that you don't have a fundamental understanding of language. Okay, I'm really confused what this video is supposed to tell me. Like, I'm looking for like Indala, do you know what I mean? Like I'm looking for like evidence, right? And understanding, not a bunch of random words that anyone can say. I'm a writer. I work with words. I know how words, like, work. How did I feel? I felt like I wasn't, like, oh, like supporting facts? Yeah. When you're talking about something, you should have supporting facts to it. Like, for instance, when you say, God created the heaven and the earth, and in the Quran it says that God lifted the sky into the heavens. Okay, well, how did he do that? Give me supporting empirical facts of how he did that. Oh, I don't know. Well, then why am I going to believe you? Right? Whereas if I can say, Well, we have these things called particles that we work with, that we know, and we can manipulate them, and we know what gases, liquids, and solids are. We know what plasma is, and energy, and elements, and we can manipulate it to our will in order to know to create things and with chemicals and things to the point where we can send spaceships into space. That's supporting facts behind something. Right? Not a feeling, right? Okay, this evokes a feeling in you. Yes, psychology, sounds, and everything are very, very powerful things. Vibration, frequency, and, what's the third one? Structure, I think. But either way. But do you see what I'm seeing, Asini? If you say, oh, they lifted them into the skies, but you have no empirical supporting facts, and I say, well, we do the same thing. We put satellites in space. Like, this picture here is from fucking space. Like, you're proving my point with the video. Like, I think that's the problem here.
For example, I'll ask you a question. Does anyone look after God?
Does anyone look after God?
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't need anyone to look after God, does he?
Wait, no, that's not true. We look after God. That's why we're here. I wish I could find a Taoist Buddhist server on Discord that's not racist. Oh, good luck with that, Indala. It's really bad to say, but yeah, it's a huge Chinese base, and China is just culturally racist. It is ingrained in their culture, in their government, in their raising, in everything, to be racist. So, yeah. Mostly American MAGA. Just continue. Hi, Callie. I looked at my stream. What's up, Callie? Guys! And I got a lot of my viewers from 2 streamers who rated me. Hell yeah, Callie. That's what it's all about. Fuck yeah. I'd raid you, Callie, but... yeah, we don't stream at the same time.
Why does he need someone to look after him?
Okay.
He looks after us.
Are you sure about what you're saying?
Well, why does he need someone to look after
Okay.
him?
I'm asking you a question. Is Jesus God?
Is Jesus God? Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Did Mary look after him as a baby?
Did Mary look after him?
Did Mary look after God?
Did Mary look after God? No, God created mankind.
Oh, so Jesus ain't God.
So he is God.
Did Mary look after God?
Did Mary... I don't understand that. You have to say it in a roundabout,
Okay.
like, say it in a very...
Is Jesus God?
Is Jesus God? Yes. It
Was
claims...
Okay.
There's a claim in one... If you look at 1 John, it says the Word
It's okay,
was
you don't
God.
need to-
The Word
you don't have
is
to-
God. So
I don't
Jesus...
take the Bible as evidence. I'm asking you, if you believe it, you don't have to prove it. I'm just asking you what you believe. Is Jesus God?
Yes.
You realize.
Hold on,
Sorry.
no.
What's his character?
I'm asking you a question. Is Jesus God?
Okay, so this is what I'm getting out of this. Is Jesus God? Yes. Okay, well, if Jesus is God, then someone took care of God, because Jesus was raised, therefore someone took care of God. That's the logic. If I were God, I would want to enlighten, and then wield my thoughts to know I could heal. See, that's what I thought, Indala, until I became a writer when I was like 14. And I wanted to create really fucked up worlds where people suffer and have problems and everything's terrible and bad and horrific. And you know why? Because it's to show the value of life. Life doesn't end when you die. Your consciousness doesn't end when you die. Death is not the end, death is the beginning. We all die 1,000 deaths every day. So, I, as a creator, want to create... And this is the duality of my book. There's the evil enemy, Anima. Anima wants paradise. He wants all the species on all of the worlds to just be perfect. Never fight with each other. Just breed, evolve, expand themselves, so when he comes to eat them, he has more food. Then, there's Gaia, the good planet. She wants horror, strife, terror, disappointment, conflict, because it shows the value and the worth of living, the worth and value of consciousness, the worth and value of virtue over evil. Because without that, what is the point of life? You have a lot of value in your enlightenments? I think so, Indala, and I don't think it needs to be a specific word. I think it just needs to be a feeling and a genuine definitional idea. Right? I don't care what word we use for it. It's just whatever comes from whatever. The fact that we can't agree on a word for it, to me, is superficial. We've all agreed on the definition. What's the definition of God? A being that is all-powerful, all knows everything, and is basically everywhere. Well, what is consciousness? Consciousness is an extrapolated idea of thought, of experience, of knowing, of thought. So obviously, the definition of consciousness and the definition of God are the exact same thing. So whether you call it God or you call it consciousness, it is the extrapolation of knowing, thinking, being, and interacting with the world. Whatever that world may be. Whether it's your own thoughts, it's heaven, it's earth, it's hell. Just watch videos like this and I guarantee you'll change your mind. I'm no expert. But see, Asini, what I don't think you get is I agree with what this guy is saying. So how am I supposed to change my mind if I already agree with it? I just don't necessarily agree with the words. I agree with the definitions, 100%. And you can use whatever words you want, just the words that I use are different. Because they're not religiously charged. And I think that's a big problem because there is a lot of charge to religion. So, having the ability to step back and have this conversation without Asini being like, oh, you need to change your mind. I don't think I need to change your mind. I don't think you need to change your mind. So I should just make friends everywhere. Then I ask for raids. Callie, I think you've literally solved streaming. Callie, I think you just solved streaming. You should make that into a TikTok, Callie. How do you increase your viewers? I found the way, guys. You engage with communities, you build connections with people, and then people come. Oh god! Who knew? It was so simple to just build connections with people. My problem, Callie? Time. That's why we've taken time off work. And I think it's worked. Like, if you look at it, Callie, we've gained, like, a bunch of new viewers because we're not streaming at the same time. Right? So the whole time has changed up, and we've gotten, like, an entirely new spread of viewers just from that. because, you know, people would normally be in bed by the time I start streaming. So if you're coming for the first 5 or 6 hours of the stream, the 6-hour mark is where I would normally start streaming. So anyone who's here before then wouldn't have been in the stream. And like I said, I'm trying to go longer, but like, fuck, man. It is hard doing 9 hours or 12 hours. And then doing all the editing and everything like that, bringing everything into the YouTube videos, doing all of the side stuff like we did that today. I still have to do Smokey's Story. I still have to do all the other ones. I think Frankenstein has the answer to what it's like on the Northern Sea. Have no idea, but I love it, Indala. I love the imagery. To me, that's take all the good pieces of all the different things and put all of the good pieces together and discard all of the bad. You talk about lots. Oh yeah, I have a very wide degree of, like, conversational depth, let's say. Like, I can talk about religion, I can talk about politics, I can talk about snot, I can talk about farts, I can talk about statistics, I can talk about creativity, I can talk about music, I can talk about science, quantum mechanics, I can talk about food, I can talk about clothing and fashion, I can talk about drugs. I don't have, like, a category. If I learn that I don't know something, I learn it. There are some things that are too big. Like, I don't have the time to literally go read the Quran and to learn the Quran and all the different religions and stuff. I mean, you can get a gist out of it, right? It teaches morals. It's a good thing. It's just a book written by a human. I'm not religious. If you are, great. I don't have anything against it. I don't think you're wrong. I'm spiritual, not religious. Because I think the power of religion combined in the hands of man is the problem. We manipulate and fuck with the structure that should be, like, natural religion. But we have gotten to such a fucked up place that we have literally spent tens of thousands of years killing each other over our ideas. And like we were talking about yesterday with, like, the blame game thing, we need to get over the blame game thing, and we need to go back to everyone's to blame. Everyone's at fault equally. There's no point in blaming other people. What we got to do now is we got to figure out how to fix the problem. No whataboutisms. Just how do we fix the problem? And I think at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Do we fix the problem with religion? If it works, it works. Do we fix the problem with science? If it works, it works. Do we fix the problem with culture? If it works, it works. I don't care how we do it. We just have to do it. Or we're not going to survive the next 1,000 years. Or what does survive the next 1,000 years isn't going to be what I would have wanted for humanity. Right? It's the wishful thinking of the future can be better than the past.